This podcast is brought to you by Purposefully Different Productions and is proudly sponsored by Little Dish, makers of delicious fresh meals for kids that are an absolute lifesaver on busy days. I love these meals because they are different to other kids' meals out there. They include a variety of ingredients, lots of textures, and are made with little taste buds in mind. Before we get started on today's episode, here's a word from our friend Giovanna Fletcher.
At Little Dish, we've spent years perfecting delicious, healthy, fresh meals guaranteed to be eaten by kids. Except when you sprinkle cheese on top instead of letting them do it, or if the little dish is served on the red plate or the yellow plate or the blue plate, or when you talk over them, or when they can't wear their reindeer antlers because it's summer and they're in the loft, or on Mondays or on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and potentially even Sundays. Good luck and Godspeed. Little Dish. Healthy food kids love. Find us in the chill dial.
Hello and welcome back to How to Feed with me, Charlotte Stirling-Reed, the parenting podcast that brings you reassurance, confidence and practical advice on feeding your baby, toddler and your whole family. On today's episode, I'm joined by someone who has truly helped to reshape how we think about plant-based eating, and that is Ella Mills, the founder of Deliciously Ella. You might know Ella from her best-selling cookbooks, her inspiring wellness app, or the delicious plant-based products that now fill so many of our supermarket shelves. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Ella about her wellness business and how she stayed true to her mission in a really confusing world of health. I'll also ask Ella to share her tips on plant-based living for families and particularly how to navigate this with young children. We'll also talk to Ella about her own experience of raising two little ones and juggling that work-life balance and all the trials and tribulations that go along with that. I'm so happy to have Ella on the podcast with me. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, honestly, it's such a pleasure. I'm like such a mega fan of yours. I know I've said this before, but I was so grateful for all the advice that you share because bringing up children and learning to feed them is no easy feat.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I actually have to say thank you for all the little shout outs you've given me on your podcast. And I'll talk about that in a bit, actually. But I honestly screen recorded one of them and sent them to my mum because my mum absolutely loves your recipes. I was like, look what she said about me, Mum. She was so chuffed. So, yeah.
Oh, I
just
love
had to add that in. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. But actually, before we start as well, I want to ask you one thing that you've got to clear up for the listeners.
Yeah.
You are not Ella's Kitchen.
No.
Please clear this up because I cannot tell you how many people think you are.
Yes, no, we've even had like sometimes Ella's Kitchen complaints, for example, come through to us. And we're like, oh, actually, that's one thing we haven't done. But no, Deliciously Ella, totally separate to Ella's Kitchen. Yes, just share a first name, but nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. It's so funny, honestly, when a lot of the media stuff came out recently about pouches, so many parents came to me, and even my dad was like, oh, and because I think I said I was interviewing you, and he was like, oh, are you going to talk about, the pouches? I'm like, no, that's not the same, Ella. It's so funny. But anyway, it must be something you have to deal with quite a lot. But for those people who don't know who you are, who haven't necessarily followed your journey, can you just talk a little bit about where Deliciously Ella came from? And how long ago was it now that you started? It's amazing what you've created.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I can't quite believe it, to be honest. I find it very surreal. So it's been a long time now, which again, I can't believe. I started it back in 2012.
Okay.
The year before that, 2011, I got very ill, and that was really what kickstarted everything. So I spent basically the best part of a year in out of hospitals, seeing neurologists, endocrinologists, gastroenterologists, having MRIs, swallowing cameras. Yeah, colonoscopies, endoscopies, like you name it, I did it basically. And it was, I was then diagnosed with a condition that affected the functioning of my autonomic nervous system. And essentially, like all of these things, like regulating your heart rate, digestive system, my immune system, all these things that should be working, automatically and happening in the background were totally non-medical speak, like haywire, completely dysfunctional. So when I stood up, my heart rate would be 180, 190 immediately. You either feel like you're going to black out or you can black out. I had very bad chronic fatigue. I was sleeping up to 18 hours a day. I had awful brain fog, pain. I looked more pregnant then than I did when I was about 7 months pregnant with my daughter. so many problems. And the problem was that the condition, which is called postural tachycardia syndrome, was very poorly understood. There were only, I think at this point, 2 doctors in the country that specialised in it. And there were no medications for it. They're all repurposed from other conditions. So they worked well for some patients and did really next to nothing for others. And unfortunately, I sat in the next to nothing camp. So I was 21. I was on about 25 different medications a day. I tried beta blockers, steroids, all sorts of things, and they didn't work. And I hit complete rock bottom with my physical health. I mean, I couldn't really do anything, but also with my mental health. And when I reached rock bottom, it's when I started to see, ask the question, I guess, is there anything else I can do to support myself? And I'm very conscious in 2025, the world looks very, very different. Whether you open your podcast app, Netflix, the mainstream media, whatever it is, there's a lot of conversation around the link between, and obviously you're so involved in this, the link between what we eat and our health. But back in 2012, no one was talking about it. And I turned to Google, as you shouldn't do, and I don't recommend, but we all do. And I started reading stories of people all over the world, different sexes, ages, all sorts of different locations, all different types of challenges with their health. But there was this common thread of people turning towards essentially like a very natural diet, moving away from ultra-processed food, prioritizing their sleep, their stress levels, their exercise, and a deeply nutritious whole food diet. And having amazing success with it. And I kind of thought, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? What you put in your body would affect your body. And, I was struggling so much with basic things like energy, for example, with the chronic fatigue. And I thought, well, look, I don't really have a huge amount to lose. And the more I read up, the more I was like, well, it makes sense. Like you need all these different vitamins and minerals for energy production, for example.
Absolutely.
And I don't think I'm eating enough of them. So let's give this a go. But I couldn't cook. I didn't like vegetables. 2 kind of pretty obvious obstacles, very tricky. And although I'm sure there's lots of parents nodding along, oh, don't like vegetables. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to teach myself to cook. And the thing that I need to do is this isn't a diet. This isn't a 6-week plan. This is a lifestyle change. And I want this to last. And if it's going to last, it has to be enjoyable. Like I believe so strongly that any habit shift has to feel sustainable. It has to feel doable within your life, and it has to be delicious. Like it's got to be enjoyable or else it will not last. And so I set about teaching myself to cook.
Love it.
But I never thought it would be anything other than like a personal project to see if it would help. And 2 years after I started the blog, and I started it as a blog because I'm an all or nothing person. I had to hold myself accountable. Site had 120 million hits.
That's insane.
And like 18 months later, I released my first book, and it was Amazon's best-selling book in any category that year. It became the fastest-selling debut cookbook ever. Like the whole thing was just so unexpected, completely mad. And kind of fast forward, over a decade later, I started a business on the back of that with my husband. We've sold over 100 million food products. Like the whole thing's been mad. We've got our own factory. We've got this amazing team. We're the fastest selling snack brand in the UK right now.
Gosh, that
like
is
it's just
mad.
mad.
I love it. It's incredible.
7 more cookbooks, but also 2 children, which obviously brought
Which
me
was
to
the
your
most
work.
challenging? That's the question. The kids or the business?
I would actually say the business.
Okay,
yeah.
got you.
Although the children were not easy. But and definitely 2 small children, and they're only 14 months apart. And a business during COVID was
hardcore.
Yes, super hardcore.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it is incredible listening to you. And I genuinely feel quite awed sitting next to you here because what you have done has been incredible. It's just such an amazing feat that you've created. I want to ask, like, obviously now, like you said, things change a lot. And how have you been able to, like, stay true to what you wanted to set out to do when you kind of developed your business now? Because there's so much pressure, there's so much competition, there's so much noise, there's so many conflicting things going on, and I think anyone struggles with that. But how have you managed to do that as a business owner who's always always trying to really do the right thing amongst it all?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I think, to be honest, there's bits, probably the majority of it's almost easier now than it was when I started. Because back in, so it's 2015 that my first book came out, so that was that January, and that's what really kind of changed the game and the opportunities. And when the book came out and Delicious Yellow was just suddenly absolutely everywhere. I mean, I was 23 and kind of overnight was on like every radio show, all the daytime TV, press, and was just such a deer in headlights. I had no idea what was going on. But obviously, you know, opportunities don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
Like you
Take them.
You just
Yeah.
got to take them. And that was really, really clear. And I was suddenly approached by all these companies, you know, would you license the brand? Would you do this? Would you do that? And I really didn't want to. I felt changing my diet had changed my life. And I felt quite evangelical is probably the best way to say it, about the kind of sanctity of that mission and of getting people cooking. And I think having spent my whole life thinking, I don't like these sorts of foods, you know, I'd started cooking just like simple, natural, plant-based meals and thinking, this is actually quite easy and actually it's delicious. And why aren't we doing more of this? Like 99% of the UK know they should eat their 5 a day, but about 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 10 teenagers manages to do it. Like, I want to make this easy. I want to open it up for people. And I felt so on this, this deep passion for that mission. And I didn't want to give the brand to anyone else. And then I met my husband at the same time, and he had a job that he hated. And I was looking at this, and I love the brand, I love the community, I love the mission, but my interest isn't in the numbers. It's not the kind of like core,
doing the bit behind the scenes necessarily.
It's not the kind of core part of the structural bit of a business, which is integral. Like it's great to have a popular brand, but if you don't have a good business plan, it's not going to succeed. And it was so clear that together we could do something huge with this, and we didn't need to license the brand, we could do it ourselves. So we knew each other 6 weeks. We'd already moved in together, got a dog, and he quit his job so that we could build the business.
I love it. In 6 weeks.
Completely mad.
You must have been like, you know, love at first sight, quite literally.
Do you know what? Having said I would never believe in that. That's such nonsense. It was. It really was. But we're over 10 years in now, so we're like, okay,
we're all right. It was the right decision.
It was the right decision. But we set about really trying to build the business. And I think, you know, I had been so struck when I changed my diet, when I started turning over the back of packets of things and what was in it. Like, I don't think anyone thinks sweets are healthy, but there were, which is fine. That's actually so much less my concern with the way that we eat. Whereas there was so many things that I were buying, be it bread, be it cereal, and I was turning over the back of packs, and I just read all the marketing claims on the front, and I was thinking, wait a second, like, why are there 3 emulsifiers in here? Why are there all these different additives and stabilizers and flavorings? Why aren't we flavoring it with food? And I had this, sorts of people do at the beginning of business journeys, this like naive optimism of like, we can do it differently. We're not going to add, which no one was calling it then, but as we call it today, ultra processed foods. Let's see. And we always used to talk between us, Matthew and I, like, this is a giant science experiment. Can we scale a company and truly scale it and have it be 100% natural? Is that even possible? And it was so hard to start with. Like, we'd go and talk to manufacturers and we'd say, we've got this great brand, we've got this airtime, people are talking about the brand, there's such an amazing opportunity, the supermarkets want it. And they just didn't want to make it with no flavorings or no emulsifiers.
Was it that they couldn't, or they didn't?
I think it was a combination of the two, because obviously several years on, it can be done, and we've seen that. And there was one product, for example, that we were looking at, we spoke to a manufacturer and they said it's not possible. And then 3 years later, they came to us and were like, no, we think we can do it now.
I love it,
So I think it was, well, it's just much more expensive, like to flavour food with food. It's
Which
much
is
more
mad.
expensive than flavourings, which is mad, as you said. But and also you have this uniformity. And I think, again, like, so many of our calories now come from ultra processed foods. And obviously it's so extraordinarily high when it comes to our children. And it does create this uniformity. Like, if you take a pesto, if you flavour a pesto with flavouring, it's going to taste the same every single time it comes off the line.
Course,
and if you flavour it with basil, just like when we make it at home, even though you think you're following the same recipe, it's not the same every single time. You know, it ebbs and flows.
Natural variations.
Exactly. And, you know, and that's not very efficient, essentially, to not have uniformity. And so it was really difficult to start with. And we definitely always had people say, oh, well, you just add a little bit of this, you add a little bit of that, and it'll be fine. And I was so, again, kind of evangelical. We will not do that. We'll never bend. So that was really hard, but obviously the world's changed so much since then, and now actually, like, that's what people are desperate for. And so I feel like we're in this amazing position where we've spent the last 10 years or so kind of building a brand where we stand for that, and suddenly there's this public awareness of it. There was a stat that came out a few months ago showing almost 13 million consumers in the UK wanted to change their habits to shift away from ultra processed foods, which, as we said, we didn't even have a name for these things.
It wasn't even
10
a
years
title,
ago. So I think we've gone from people thinking that we were probably completely mad to actually feeling like we're kind of in the right place, which is exciting. Although obviously there's just the food system is so broken in this country, and there's so much that has to change. So it's...
I guess you were kind of front runners for a lot of what we're seeing now. Like there is a lot more of that. And, I know supermarkets are often pushing companies to improve what they're offering and to have healthier options and to, there's so much of that now. But I guess you were doing it before they were even asking for it.
Yeah, when most people thought we were just mad.
Yeah. They were like, these guys.
Make your life easier. It'll be quicker. It'll be cheaper. Just do it like that. Whack it in. No one minds. And they didn't. I think as a general rule, most consumers didn't mind.
Didn't even think about it.
Exactly. But that's a huge
shift. There's so
shift.
much more awareness. And do you think that's a good thing, that there's a lot more awareness now? I know that there's like pros and cons, of course. And obviously, what you talk about on your podcast, which is amazing, by the way, if anyone wants to listen to it, it's called The Wellness Scoop. What you guys talk about on there is the misinformation. So obviously there's part of it which is great because there's more access, knowledge, availability, and supermarkets asking for this stuff. But you also have a hell of a lot of miscommunication as well.
Yeah, I find kind of where we're at now really frustrating, and I'm sure you do too, for quite similar reasons, which is that I think, not to like idealize any point in time, but if we took like 4 or 5 years ago, I think people were becoming more aware of what they were eating, more aware of the importance of diet, but the world didn't feel so noisy. And I think the algorithm shift that TikTok kind of ushered in terms of how social media is now. I mean, there was a stat that Rhea and I were talking about on the Wellness Scoop a few weeks ago, and it was saying, it's almost 98% of information shared on social media now when it comes to nutrition advice is not aligned with public health information. Now, whether public health information could be stronger, and again, I know you talk about this a lot, is one thing, but essentially the vast majority of information that people are digesting is either misleading or incorrect.
Yeah.
It's also so noisy. It's so, do this one thing and your whole life will change.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
So conflicting.
Promises,
It's so dogmatic. It's so this one camp or another. And that's not how people's lives are, and particularly obviously again with what you do, like parents are so busy and they're juggling such an extraordinary number of responsibilities. I think most parents feel deeply overwhelmed. And so trying to make changes is so hard, and it's made so much harder by all the contradictory information and the fear mongering and all the rest of it. But coupled with the fact that the food landscape again is so difficult, and like obviously, I really want to feed my children well, and I make a big effort to cook for them. Easier said than done, but you're always walking past shops and they're like, well, why can't I have a lollipop? And I'm like, because we don't eat lollipops every day. And they're like, but I had one at the birthday party. And it's like, I know, but you can't have one today. But it's everywhere. And so consistently saying no, it's so hard. And they're like, well, my friend does this. And it's like, I know, different rules in different families. And I don't know.
Gosh,
so I think it's just a minefield, isn't it?
It's such a minefield, and it's really hard for parents to navigate, even if you are trying to do the right thing. There's a whole group of the population who perhaps aren't so aware necessarily, and then you've got a whole group who are aware. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people who listen to this podcast will be, but actually it's so hard to navigate. And again, there is that conflicting, you shouldn't restrict them, but actually obviously don't let them have a lollipop every day. Well, how do you restrict it's
well, that's
so
the big
hard.
question, isn't it? Exactly. Is how do you find a really healthy balance for yourself as much as your family, where you are enjoying the birthday parties and the cake and not creating a complex or this good and bad and all the rest of it. But when the food environment is what it is,
exactly.
It's like, no, we don't have that every single day, but it is everywhere, and it's exposed them every single day. So explaining why you don't have it every single day, it's really, really,
it's
really hard.
And I think even, for someone like myself who's a professional in this field, I'm still trying to work out those conversations that I have with my kids about it. Rafi's old enough now, I have full-on conversations with him. I remember actually on Rhea's podcast saying to her, he once came home he'd been at like a sports club, came home and was like, Mum, why can't I have any normal food in my lunchbox? Absolutely broke my heart. And I remember saying to him, Raf, what is normal? And he's like, well, packets of crisps, everyone else has crisps and, chocolate bars. And I was like, okay, well, and then we had like a discussion about, well, what would be like a compromise so that we could add something in that he did feel was more, let's say, normal food. It's just devastating because, it's not what the majority of people necessarily are doing. So it's a really hard one to navigate.
Exactly. And you want to, I find it really, really challenging. And you want to give them healthy food and you want to make sure they've got their 5 a day and their 30 different
Yeah.
pots a week and
Tick,
all the
tick,
rest of it,
tick, yeah.
tick all the satisfying boxes. But you also want them to feel part of their peers. And I find it really difficult. And like, again, there's a lot of conversation around processed meats in the media at the moment. And I find it really challenging. You look and you see with children, like the top 3 meats that are consumed, sausages, sausage rolls and ham, 3 of the top 5 are things that the World Health Organization would class as possible carcinogens and not something we should be eating in abundance. And I find this balance really difficult of saying, we shouldn't have lots of these foods, but not making people feel guilty when that's the norm. And how do you find that balance? But equally, I think we've also got to this point where it's like the food environment is so odd that confronting the realities of actually the fact that
It's
so much of what we
important to do
eat
that.
really isn't very good for us. And I'm not saying that having it in moderation every now and
Is a
again,
problem.
that's not where the problem sits. The problem sits in the fact that over half of our calories, adults and children, come from ultra-processed foods. And so these aren't things we're eating in moderation. And that's the challenge. And I think that's the message that I've always found difficult to get across from people, is it's not about saying never eat these foods, but it is, we need more broccoli, we need more lentils, and how do we get people to want to eat those foods?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I feel that message is very hard to put out in our world, in what we do, because I think people do take it as judgment on their parenting, and I always really struggle with that, because I never want any parent to feel bad or shamed, because it is so hard being a parent. And also, we're living in a world and an environment where actually those foods are so normal, so readily available, so cheap, so easy to access. So it makes complete sense why a lot of the time those are the foods that people opt for.
Totally. And then I think also when you look at the way that so much information is conveyed now, it is through social media, or it is through clickbaity headlines.
Yeah,
and as a
completely.
result, that nuance is really difficult to get across, which again is not where we were a few years ago. But that shift I think we've seen in algorithms makes it really, really difficult to ever get nuance, which is like, don't worry if you eat those things on occasion, but it's important that you know the truth. And
exactly.
and that's
you've
so
got to
difficult.
get the facts out there at the same time.
Totally.
So yeah,
but it's not conducive to a 4-second clip.
Yeah, completely.
And I think that's the problem and I think in this world of like, deeply dogmatic, quite controversial, very black and white thinking,
hooks and headlines.
It's really, really challenging.
Yeah, exactly. No, completely agree. One thing I wanted to ask you, which I've been asking a lot of people, is, do you feel like when you became a parent, I mean, obviously you've talked a lot about your, your food brand and your kind of ethos around food. Do you feel like when you became a parent, did your, idea and concept of healthy eating, or your idea about food, evolve?
For sure.
Really?
I think for a few different reasons. I think probably on a personal level, in the way that I cook and my husband and I eat, is like, ultimately we were really busy before the kids building the business, so we weren't like swimming in time.
Yeah.
But obviously suddenly the small amount of time that you have is suddenly like
shrunk.
Feels like 1 second. And so I think in terms of like batch cooking and being super organized, that felt like it took on a completely different meaning for us to eat well. And then I think also I had 2 really different experiences with my children. The first one of them like basically didn't eat till she was almost 2.
Really?
And which was so stressful. She categorically refused to be weaned, as in, so it was forced self-weaning, which I wouldn't have chosen, because I was so terrified about choking. It was like my one, and still is my one, like big parenting fear. I've done so many first aid courses. Yeah. So afraid of it. But she, and as a result, like, didn't really get in any calories, and basically barely ate till she was almost 2. Now eats like a horse.
Love
And
it.
that I found really difficult, because all the advice was keep offering, don't pressure. That's really hard to do for over a year when they're quite little and you're like, I don't think you're eating enough.
And they're really determined,
determined, and you again don't want to create a complex. Other one ate like a horse, but is now much pickier. And again, and they've like, one of them will love a certain food and the other one will hate it. And again, I've just found that I think you learn, you just cannot bring any judgment into how people feed their children, because children dictate a lot of the rules. And I think this whole idea of like, you offer, they choose, is brilliant, but actually living with that's really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard in the moments.
It's really hard. And the time pressure and what other people are doing, to your point in your conversation with your son with their lunchbox, like that all becomes really nuanced, really complicated.
Older,
It's luck of how do their friends eat, their family eat, you know, is it in line with what you want to do? And that's all out of all of our hands. And so I think it's, you know, and explaining it all to children is really, really
Yeah,
hard. So I think
completely.
it's really challenging.
It's really tricky. Honestly, I think a lot of parents will really appreciate like you sharing that, because they'll probably be sitting there being like, oh my gosh, this is my experience. But do you feel, it sounds like, first of all, you had two very different eaters, which is
Polar
exactly
opposites.
what I had as well. Two polar opposites. But then it also sounds like there was a lot of evolving of their own eating as well. So what would be your message to parents who maybe are like in the thick of that right now? Because I think that would really maybe help some people.
I think, and look, I took all my learnings from you and all the other people I was watching and following, and it was this like sit it out, which is so hard to do. So hard to do. But I think it was that like keep offering, and in time it will switch. I did find, again, this is so much easier said than done. The more we eat together, I find that really helpful. It's way less frustrating because when you've made something that you're eating and enjoying, you know, if two, even if four of you are eating and enjoying, that feels like a big win. And I found them like cooking things to expose them to new flavors, and then they refuse it point blank. But you don't, it's not really adult friendly. That felt really wasteful and really frustrating, and you did feel that pressure kind of building a little bit. Whereas, and also their willingness to try things if we're eating it is off the charts, off the scale, so much better. So I found that really helpful. But again, with busy work lives,
the practicality.
The practicality of that is, and again, they're getting a little bit older. They're nearly 5, nearly 6, and again, it's a bit easier because they can eat a bit later. So if you know, it's easier to eat together sometimes. So half the week, say. So again, that changes. But when they're like 2 and 3, that was a lovely idea. And in COVID, we did it more. But it's like post-COVID, 2 and 3,
really tricky.
Just, the premise was there, the reality wasn't. And it was really, really frustrating, but everything said, like, you know, I really wanted them to love food and have a positive relationship with food, and everything I got was like, don't put pressure on them, because if you keep putting pressure on them, it will create this like stress around meal times for them, and it won't necessarily. But I found my daughter who wanted to do everything herself, she's a deeply independent person, like craves autonomy, which again, like such a mirror. I'm the same. So I'm like, can't really force her to do one thing when I refuse to not have autonomy. Once she could feed herself, actually feed herself, which again was more like 2. As in really coordination properly take food and put it in her mouth. Then it changed completely, because she could eat a full meal basically. Whereas again, when they're like 14 months or whatever it was, you know, they could eat bits more, but it's the coordination to eat like a full bowl of food just wasn't there.
And do you think that your like slight kind of fear of the choking had an impact on that? Because
for sure, I'm sure it did. And
because that is one of parents' biggest concerns. I really do feel like what you're saying, like this fear of choking, the little one not eating, the differences in the two kids, the lack of putting the pressure on the eating together, these are all so going to be so familiar for lots of families.
Exactly. And the more people you speak to, people are like, it's so normal. But I remember like I'd done, you know, kind of bump and baby type, you know, NCT class, and all the mums were like, oh my gosh, you cannot believe how much my son's eating. He's had 3 bowls of porridge. And my nephew was a very similar age to my daughter and was the same. And I was like, she's had 1 spoon, like, if that. And that is so hard to not feel like you're doing a bad job or there's something wrong. But it kind of ebbs and flows.
Exactly that.
And they take turns on who's a great eater and who's not.
Yes, they so do. Mine do as well. Still now they take turns. And I feel like, you know, the natural variation in appetites is so underrated. I think that we don't realise that actually kids are very intuitive. And sometimes we're sitting there thinking, but we feel like you need to eat more. But actually they evidently don't sometimes.
Totally,
you know?
And they do. They have different meals they love. Like one of them's such a lunch person. And the amount she can eat at lunch is super impressive. But she's not really a dinner person. And the other one will eat like a horse at dinner. But like breakfast, you know, trying to get breakfast before we leave for school. Again, it's it's just like accepting it now, which is like, it's probably half a piece of toast and a few bits of apple. And if she's done that, that's a thumbs up. She doesn't like breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of have to say, like, fair enough.
That was what Ada was exactly like that. And even now, like my parents came round today to look after the kids while I came here, and my mum was like lumping porridge in a bowl for her, and I'm thinking, she's never going to eat that
Yeah,
amount.
exactly.
I give her the smallest amount and I put it down for her, and most of the time she will eat that and only that.
Yeah,
and
but
it's
as you said, it's
really
a little
small.
bit.
It's a really small bowl, and she's always been like that. She didn't eat breakfast till she was about 18 months of age.
Yeah.
She just was not interested. And I had to really reevaluate, because my son, he is the biggest breakfast eater. Oh my God, he would wolf down bowls and bowls of porridge. So when Ada just wouldn't eat, I had to really reassess and think, she doesn't want it at that time, and I have to learn that that's her appetite. And she still eats well, and she does eat breakfast now, but yeah, it took a long time. It took a year and a half.
It is, and I think it's just so difficult. And I found it much more difficult when they were little. Now that they're that little bit older, I do find it much easier, because A, you can talk to them, and B, you can now see their patterns. And as I said,
exactly, you learn them.
Humongous dinner, so who cares if she has a small breakfast?
Exactly.
We're golden. And again, and I can see that that's really normal. Like, loads of adults are like that.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas when they're little, it's really stressful, because I think you do feel that weight of responsibility
to feed them.
To feed them and to help them grow. I don't know. It's not like I don't feel responsible now, but I also feel like they feed back, and it is this, you feel like it's a relationship, and you're kind of navigating it together. And obviously when you've got a 1-year-old, you're not, well, I didn't feel we were navigating it together. I feel like it's all the parent.
It was just so stressful. Yeah. And I do think we do talk a lot about that bi-directional kind of conversation, but obviously that takes time, and it takes time to learn each individual child.
Exactly.
So can I ask a couple of questions? So how, obviously you've kind of got through this, how do you find, like, make healthy eating, I guess, manageable and enjoyable for your family now?
It's just like, I'm a batch cooking obsessive.
Okay,
and I do feel it's like so much, it's like batch cooking so like uncool and like all the rest of it. But gosh, it is just, it is the one thing that helps, because the reality is like, after clubs and after school and after work, like A, we're all really tired. Myself very much included. B, everyone's normally starving. And I do find trying to eat a little bit earlier, because otherwise they do end up just wanting so many snacks, and then again not being that hungry for dinner. Whereas I find trying to have dinner and then snacks so for us often works better. You're just exhausted. And whereas when you get home and you've got stuff, and you can add on to it, like chuck some extra stuff in the oven, whatever it is. And there's 2 things I'll do basically every single week. They love pesto pasta.
Okay.
Like, it's just a win.
Love it.
And again, so I'm always like, okay, well, how can I kind of pimp it
Add
up?
it more, exactly.
And again, I learned that so much from you. Which is, and there's things that they'd never eat. Like, they would never eat rocket. That they're just not going to eat that at the moment. Whereas like rocket in pesto is delicious. They have no idea that it's there. For example, or like doing the pesto half with cashew nuts or almonds, again, just to get in different fruits and veg.
Up the variety,
putting peas in the pesto, putting some tofu in the pesto, for example. Like, one of them loves tofu, the other one hates it, but you can chuck some in pesto, makes it extra creamy, it's extra nutrition. So it's all these like little bits and pieces. So I'll make a really big pesto that we can eat throughout the week again, and then I'll make pasta in advance as well, and I do peas and edamame in it. And so it's like, it's such a simple meal. You're literally reheating it. It takes 2 minutes, but they're getting, a whole handful, put greens in the spinach, in the pesto, spinach, things like that. And so they're getting lots of different green veggies. And I often use like a lentil pasta or something. And so they're getting a really nutritious meal, but it's literally taken me 3 minutes.
Yes, to make. Love that.
So I always do that whenever I cook it. I'll make sure I've got 2 or 3 more meals. And then the other thing is I will always do some kind of bean, whether it's like creamy black beans, whether it's some like kind of chili, lentil chili, 5-bean chili, anything, basically whatever I've got leftovers. And again, that's the kind of thing, like at the moment, they don't like mushrooms. They used to like it, currently going through a no mushroom phase, but I'll dice them up so small, like, like you're dicing your onion, just 1 or 2 of them, but just for that, like support in gut health and diversity, and saute it with the onions and garlic and things like that. Or I have a red pepper or leek, and like they don't like leeks.
My 2 don't like leek. I love leek.
Me too. But again, it adds loads of flavour to the base of that sort of thing. And I'll tip in a can of coconut milk, super creamy. So again, I find it a really helpful way. A, you've just got it ready to go. But B, you're getting in things that they wouldn't normally eat. And obviously it's a combination. You don't want to sneakily give them everything. You want to expose them to it. I really, just be honest, like, just don't have the energy to be cooking, roasting leeks that they're never going to eat when I'm not going to eat them too. So that's the kind of thing where those sorts of foods, I'll expose them to it when I'm cooking and we're eating it. And then if they don't want to eat them, fab, we'll eat
Yeah.
them. Great, they're not wasted.
Yeah.
But then to try and get that diversity
Yeah.
in, I'll use those
Building a
two as
variety in.
exactly, and it works really, really well.
So would you bulk cook those, for example, like on the weekend or on a day where you can just go, right, I'm going to power these 2 out and then I've got meals for the rest of the week?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I was home early last night, so we made a big creamy black beans, and I had time to do that. And now I've got another 2 meals.
Love it.
For whenever,
Yeah.
and then I'll pop them in the freezer.
Yeah.
So basically, whenever I'm cooking,
Yeah.
I just try and make like
bulk.
3 portions or 3 versions
yeah,
of it.
that's
And
what I always say.
I basically never cook anything that we'll only eat once now,
Yeah.
because it's just so
that's
satisfying, isn't it?
Such a good point. And also, yeah, because I always do that with like chili or even like a pasta sauce, and you can then use it in so many different ways,
Exactly.
on nachos or on jacket potato or with rice or with pasta. You can just change
Exactly.
it up so much, or turn it into a soup. That's what I did with some the other day. So
Totally.
so
And it makes
much
you
can
feel
do.
so much better when you
Yeah.
get home and you open the fridge and you're like, right, we
Got
got
that.
this.
Boom.
Whereas when you feel like you're starting from scratch every day and you're just exhausted, it's a lot. It's asking a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is. And it's no wonder. But I love that idea. Just a couple of meals. These are what you have. And you add variety within those
100%.
meals. And then when you eat with them, you vary up what you have as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then obviously some nights we just are so simple, and it's like
Yeah.
peanut butter and jam
Yeah,
toast.
yeah,
But
yeah,
again,
yeah.
it's like, what can we add on top of that?
Exactly,
Is
yeah.
it hummus with
Yeah.
carrot sticks? Is it then, putting hemp seeds on the
Yeah,
toast?
love
It's like
that.
all these little things. But I think it's also taking the pressure off. Like when I first started cooking, I felt like I had to, cook something different 7 nights a week. I mean, it's like a performance.
Yeah,
And now it's
completely.
like, okay, let's strip it back. And it's
love
actually
that.
like, what can we do that feels really manageable on a day-to-day basis?
That's such a good tip,
Because
honestly.
I think
yeah.
also we all try and be perfect. I think when it comes to parenting, like so
Yeah.
many of us, we're trying
Yeah.
to be perfect parents, and no one can be a perfect
not
parent. And
realistic,
also
yeah.
so often you're like so busy trying to do the right thing that they're not present with them. And
Yeah,
you're like,
completely.
no, I can't
Or
play
you're
with you because
stressed
I'm making
because
you a
you're not-
Michelin star
Yeah,
meal.
yeah, exactly. I'm making you a 3-course dinner here.
Exactly, which you won't eat.
Yeah.
And actually, like, there's so much beauty and like good enough. And I think again, but that's really hard when you're starting out. And I
Yeah.
think, almost 6 years into it now, I find
Yeah.
that a lot easier.
Love
And I
that.
look at them and I'm like, you're growing well, you're
Yeah.
thriving.
We're all
I feel
okay.
like we're doing something right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I honestly think that would be really good tips and hope for families. So I just want to ask you about plant-based eating
Yeah, of
or
course.
flexitarianism, vegetarianism. What do you think are the misconceptions that we hear about these days? I think, again, like we talked a lot about the noise, and there is a lot of variation, isn't there, whether you are fully plant-based, flexitarian, vegetarian, pescatarian.
Of course.
What's your kind of take on it? And what do you think are the misconceptions that people hear about, being
I mean, I
plant-based?
think protein obviously is such a huge buzzword just in the world of health
It's
and
massive
well-being,
at the moment,
nutrition.
yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that extends to cooking for families as well. I think people are nervous of that.
Definitely, yeah.
For sure. And I think that, but again, I think it's something for all of us to be aware of. I don't think it's something to be worried about. Again, like
definitely
if we
not,
just
yeah.
look at general nutrition, almost nobody is deficient
yeah,
in protein,
exactly.
whereas we are all chronically deficient in fiber.
Yeah.
Over 90% of the UK population. So we desperately need to be focusing our effort on eating more fruits and veg. And obviously the beauty of plant-based proteins, like all your beans and legumes and things like that, is that they are both protein and fiber.
Yeah.
So I think, however you eat, trying to incorporate more of that is such a win. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, to your point. It can be all sorts of different approaches to it. But actually just getting people feeling really comfortable with eating those sorts of foods is such a benefit because they're so nutritious.
Yeah.
So whether that is, to your point, like a 5-bean chili or something like that, or maybe like your children love normal bolognese, as in like a traditional bolognese, but actually could you swap 30% of the meat for lentils, for example, and then you're bringing in that plant-based protein, that fiber, super nutritious, but you're keeping it familiar for people. So I think it's just trying to be
Tweaks.
flexible and tweaks.
Yeah.
And again, not feeling like everything has to be all or nothing, which is so the world that we live in, isn't it?
So much, so black and white.
It's so black and white, which is really overwhelming, I think.
Yeah. I have a lot of families who follow me, a lot of families actually, who are either, plant-based or trying to include more plant-based foods in their child's diet, even from a young age. And I know that there's a lot of parents who do kind of worry about doing that. But I'm a massive advocate for exactly like you said, there's only benefit to increasing our intake of plants. Most of us need to do that anyway. Do you have any tips for like families who are starting out, whether that be weaning or really young toddlers? and on doing that, on going more towards a plant-based approach, or just including more plants in their child's diet. I would obviously be talking a lot about doing it from a young age.
Completely. Yeah. And I do say, like, oh gosh, I've got so much wrong in parenting. Who doesn't? Like, there's no one's doing it perfectly, as we said. But I think I find it, I know, I said this to you yesterday, like, it's difficult talking about raising children. Like, it really is, because it's so deeply personal. It's so nuanced.
Personal,
it's so different child to child, as we've obviously both experienced with our children. I'm sure if I had 6 children, all 6 would be completely different.
Yeah.
No plans to do that though. But it's that thing where there is no right way to do it. But I find it difficult when people will be like, oh, well, do your children eat that? And I'm like, they do, but that's because that's what they've always known. Like, we started off eating like lentil coconut curry type dishes, and as I said, like black bean chilies, and that's really normal to them. And so we then added on the birthday party food, but we did start with like black beans and things like that. And so they do feel like that's a very normal way to eat, and that's a massive advantage to then trying to add on. And I'm really aware of that. So I do think, like, the earlier you can start it, the better.
Exactly.
I do think this whole, and I always think Joe Wicks gets this across so well, this eating together, as we said, easier said than done lots of the time. But I think the more you can do that, to have that like normalization and exposure is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just like, start with small things.
Yes.
And, I always come back to, maybe it's silly, but like, I called the brand Delicious Cielo because I wanted it to be delicious. And I think sometimes almost with children, we're like, got to get the broccoli in, we've got to get these things in. And I don't know if we're always doing it in the most delicious way. Like, I don't like steamed broccoli. I think it's really bland. I don't kind of blame my children for not wanting to eat steamed broccoli. Whereas I do find if I'm making like, I don't know, they love like sort of soy sauce, roasted tofu or fried tofu, so it's really crispy with rice and like a chopped mango and edamame sort of salsa-y thing. Yeah. And then they'll be like hoovering up these foods, and then I'll roast broccoli with it. And again, they love soy sauce, and I'll have some with that with it. And it's crispy and all the rest of it. But if I steam it, they won't eat it. Or likewise, one of them was in a like, I hate broccoli phase. And actually I found like steaming a little bit and again, blending it into a pesto, added pistachios to it. Obviously, again, big trend at the moment. So I had some in the house and it was such a creamy pesto. And she hoovered it up and it was so delicious. I hoovered it up too. And I think it's also like just trying to introduce these foods in a way that like, you would most want to eat them.
Absolutely.
And again, obviously, like, you're not going to be dousing a 1-year-old's food in soy sauce. But like, again, as they get a little bit older, I do thinking, okay, let's try and get carrots in. But what's the most delicious way we can get carrots in? Because I think kids' food can be, we can lean on the side of really bland when we're thinking about cooking for our children.
But you don't have to,
Exactly. And obviously when they're teeny, and this is your expertise, not mine, but when they're teeny, obviously it's a little bit different. But as they get older, actually, and again, you look at different cultures around the world and what children eat, and it's a huge amount of spice and flavour.
Exactly,
But I think we're probably just a bit bland. And I know you often talk about it, like when you look at children's menus, they are really lacking in both nutrition and flavour. And so I think it's just trying to, if we want to start introducing these foods, like the yummier they are, probably more likely we are to get them in.
I think a lot of parents are scared of adding the like flavours and the spice, but in a couple of my last books especially, I did a lot of cooking with like lemon juice and lime juices, and there's so much flavour. If you're making a stir fry, you can add lime juice and a bit of peanut butter.
Totally, and sesame oil, and as we said, soy sauce and all these things. And again, you end up with something, maybe even a little bit of like vinegar or something, like rice vinegar, and you end up with something, and they love it. And sometimes I'm quite surprised. We were in Thailand over Christmas and there were things that they were just like, again, hoovering up that would not you've necessarily have said like children's food, but I tried it and I was like, this is delicious. Like no wonder you love it. It tastes amazing. Obviously if it was super spicy, they're not going to eat that. Well, my children wouldn't eat that. But in some cultures they would.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because I think for a lot of parents, and I know whenever I share things, often parents do say to me, but how do you get them to eat them? But I think exactly like you said, it is starting early. I've done a whole episode actually for this podcast on familiarization because I think that's something that is so lost. Like if your child doesn't eat something now, it's probably because they're not familiar with it. It's not a normal part of their day to day. But like the foods that you eat every day are going to be totally different to foods that another family eats. So your little ones will eat yours.
Exactly.
It's the norm for them. And I've talked a lot about that in this episode. What's normal for one child is different to another. And when, families mix, that's when you get the kids coming home asking questions like, why do they have that? Or why do they not eat that? Or why can't I have squash, for example?
Exactly.
And it's all
Ours
about
is now, why
different
can't
normals.
I have ketchup with my veggie fried rice? And I'm like, and she wants to dip, everything in ketchup now. And I'm like, we can have ketchup, but do we have to dip everything in it?
Oh, God, you mentioned vinegar. Rafi is like that with vinegar. Everything. He'll be like, can I have vinegar on that? What was it he had? Pasta with tomato sauce at a pub that we went to. And he's like, could I get some vinegar? I'm like,
really?
He's obsessed with vinegar. He loves it. So, but, they find their things they love. And I just think that is, what it's all about is that familiarity, eating together, keeping
and trying to give them that autonomy where they are, again, as they get a little bit older, like it does sit in their hands a bit. And I have to say the other thing, and again, like, learn this from lots of other people, not in like, we don't do it in like a horribly strict way, but in a, this is it, what's for dinner. And I always make sure there's things that I know they like in it. And maybe it's just the rice and avocado, like maybe it's nothing else in there, but it's not giving them a whole plate of something that's like brand new and scary.
Beans on toast instead. Yeah,
exactly. But I don't cook different things for them. And I'm not going to then make them toast.
Something else. Who has the time for that anyway? I find that exhausting.
Well, and I really find the waste. I mean, there's so much waste, particularly when they're little with children. And I find the kind of, the waste of it quite uncomfortable. Yeah. And also, I feel like if they could always have peanut butter toast, they probably would. To be honest.
Yeah, oh God, mine are the same. They peanut butter on crackers or toast.
Exactly.
Always the win.
They weirdly love rice cakes. Like,
oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, like a peanut butter rice cake. Yeah. If they could eat that for dinner, like,
they would
keep choosing that over something vaguely unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And so I think that's not an option in our house. And as I said, not in a really harsh way. I'm never going to send them to bed without anything to eat. Yeah. And I'll make sure there's fruit that they like. There's all sorts of things. But I do try and offer one thing. Yeah. And that is meal. What's for dinner.
And here's your sides. Here's the bits that go with it.
And I know that you'll like some of it and there'll be other things to go. And so I know that you won't be like deeply like deficient. But I think it's also that thing of like, and again, you always speak so brilliantly about this, but I think it is a really helpful reminder of like, and we're the same as adults, like it's for everyone. Like one meal means very little.
Yes, exactly.
And it is like how you eat over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year that matters when it comes to your nutrition and what your body's got enough of or not enough of. And so again, it's like if you give them something that's vaguely unfamiliar and they do just eat rice, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all good. No one's in trouble. You don't get a deficiency from one meal.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, with people's nervousness to introduce things, I think it is also important to remind yourself of that. Like, there's a whole matrix here. They've eaten all sorts of other things that day, they will tomorrow and the next day and the rest of their life. And so it's okay if they takes a little while to become comfortable with something and they just eat a small amount of it in one go.
Yeah. Honestly, you've answered so many of the questions and things that I say. So it's so great. Obviously, very much aligned. And I love that. And just a couple of more questions left now. But for families who are looking for more plant-based options and more plant-based meals, do you have some go-to ingredients that you always have in your cupboard? And B, a couple of go-to recipes? I know you've mentioned a couple for dinner, but other occasions.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I always have nut butters.
Yeah, same.
As you said, like I'll put them in like a sauce for noodles for something, or obviously like breakfast, quick breakfast, or on porridge, rice cakes, of course. But you see, when they're like, can we have jam rice cakes? I'm like, no, we're gonna have nut butter with it. So you can have as much jam as you want. Yeah. But then again, it's like trying to mix it up between peanut, almond, cashew, all the rest of it for that diversity. And that's an easy quick breakfast. Use it for sauces. Lots of tins of like chickpeas or jars and beans, lentils, black beans. Again, trying to get that variety in. I'll, in terms of batch cooking, often do things like a hummus, but sometimes I'll use chickpeas and sometimes I'll use butter beans. Again, just trying to get them to have that variety in their life, which again is easier when you're making a hummus than it is necessarily presenting it to them.
Of course,
So I always have that. Always have a lot of basil because I eat a lot of pesto.
Yeah, I love basil.
On everything. And then just a mixture of like fruit. I mean, they eat fruit like there's no tomorrow. And I remember again once seeing something when they were little, being like, don't always prioritize vegetables over fruit. Children love fruit. There's loads of nutrition in fruit.
Yeah.
That's great if they're getting that in, which I find really helpful. Love my freezer. Again, I've always got loads of frozen berries. I've got frozen bananas for smoothies. And then I've got loads of like frozen peas, edamame, that they eat a lot of, which is super, super helpful.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just having all those staples, isn't it? Because then if you've got all of those sorts of things in the house,
you can always whack something together. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that whacking together is great and should be encouraged, as opposed to feeling like you've got to make a Michelin star meal
exactly.
for your children every night, which is super, super helpful.
But sometimes I think that's confidence as well, isn't it? It's confidence of whacking stuff together. I always do fridge raids where I'm like, right, what do we need using up? I literally just bang it all on the table and we have a little buffet. And they sometimes end up being like the most fun, but also the most balanced meals that my kids have. So I do that once or twice a week minimum, really.
Yeah, and it's so helpful, exactly. And they've got pitters and they can chuck all that sort of stuff in. And then they've got, dips and it's great. And then you're not wasting stuff, which again is really satisfying.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. Right, so last question, which is, again, plant-based, top tips for helping families who are introducing plant-based meals to their families to make it more manageable, just very generally.
But yeah, I mean, we definitely touched on this one, but definitely like always cook once and eat 2, 3, 4 times from it, so that you're not always starting from scratch. I think be familiar. Like if you want to introduce more plant proteins into your diet, as we said, like make a bolognese that they love, but do a third of it with lentils, for example. It's such a familiar way of doing it, where you're getting that in, but in a way that's really gentle. And over time, maybe they start really liking a lentil bolognese sometimes too. But you just do it slowly and gently. And I think trying to dial up the flavour on it and eat together. I think those are the best ways to approach it. Because I think if you're putting down something, as we said, that's just so new to your child, and then you're like, go, I want you to finish that. It's really difficult, but equally you've put a lot of time and effort and money into making it, so you really do want them to. I think that's really normal reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, completely, of course.
So I think just making it as familiar as possible. And or, I often talk about this with adults. Like people would say like, well, I really want to eat more veggie food, but my partner doesn't want to, for example. I'm like, well, flip it. The convention in the UK is meat and 2 veg. But instead try and make the veg bit the kind of the hero, the bigger part of it.
For sure,
and put the meat, the fish, whatever it is on the side. And so again, it's still familiar. It's still there. You haven't changed everything overnight.
Completely.
But you are just introducing it in a way that's like flavor first. And familiar, which I think just opens people's curiosity to try it.
Definitely. Oh, I love that. And so last question, and then we're going to do a really quick fire round. But your last question is, what is your one tip to parents who are feeding their kids right now and in the thick of it?
Oh gosh, I think it's just, it just ebbs and flows, doesn't it? It's the same with us and our habits and the way that we look after ourselves. Like life ebbs and flows. And I think sometimes it feels really difficult, and then sometimes it feels like you're winning. And there's one thing that I always come back to, which I think is relevant for this, but everything in your life is like, I always have this idea that so many of us, we've got big goals or ambitions, be that with our parenting, be that with our own healthy habits, our careers, whatever it is. And we have this view of where we want to be and where we are today. And there's often a gulf in between the two, and trying to get there is really difficult. You want to cook from scratch more, you want your children to eat more healthily, or whatever it is in this case. And I always come back to like, just lose the gulf, like stop thinking in that terms, and just like think about getting 1% better, 1% closer every day. So like, what's just the one little thing you could do today to get you closer to where you're trying to be? And if you could keep that up every day for a year, which when you're just moving 1% from the goalpost is pretty achievable. You're getting over 300%. You're smashing it. And I think we all really overestimate what we're going to achieve today or tomorrow or in a week's time, and we underestimate what we're going to do in a year. And I think if you think about your family's eating habits, the idea that you're actually going to change them all overnight, it's like, it's never going to happen. You're stressed, you're overwhelmed, they'll refuse it. Like the whole thing, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail. Whereas if what you say is like, you know what, I'm working from home on Thursday this week, I've got a little bit more time. I'm going to cook something that we'll all sit down and eat together, and it's going to be a little bit new. What an amazing place to start. Or like, actually, we don't get our 5 a day or our 30 plants a week, so I'm going to make a bit more effort. I'm going to introduce one new plant every day. And that might be putting sunflower seeds in a pesto that my children and I already really like. Or it might be like, okay, with breakfast, we're going to have our peanut butter toast, but I'm going to cut up a piece of fruit with it. It's like, these are really small, manageable things, and just focus on that. But if you did that consistently over time, the way that for you, how you eat, how your children eat, how your family eats, the way you eat is going to look fundamentally very different a year from now. But you've done it in a way that's doable with your busy life. And I think that's my number one thing.
Love
it's like,
that.
stop
I really
having
love
this
that.
mighty
One tiny thing each day will make a
day.
huge difference over a year.
Mega. Like you'd really be eating very differently, and you will have introduced so many foods, and it's so great for your health, for your family's health, but it's manageable. And in a world where we're all really overwhelmed, manageable is the only way, as we like said right at the beginning, like
do any of it.
For anything to be sustainable, it's got to be enjoyable, and to be enjoyable, it has to be both achievable and delicious when it comes to how we eat. And I think just strip it back to that.
Love it. I honestly think so many parents will benefit from all of your tips and your thoughts on this, and also your reality, like the realism of like it wasn't plain sailing feeding your kids as same with me. So I love that.
It was hard.
Really quick fire round. So number 1, what's always in your fridge?
Pesto.
Love it.
Covered that.
Number 2, your favourite 10-minute meal?
Ooh, a quick stir fry.
Quick stir fry.
Peanut butter noodles.
Love it. And pesto pasta.
Reheated pesto pasta.
Number 3, what one food your kids love that has actually quite surprised you?
Tofu. Steamed tofu.
Perfect. Love it.
Even quite plain.
Yeah, Ada sometimes eats it when I'm making it into like little nuggets or something. She'll just eat it raw. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to question, but there we go.
Likewise.
Number 4, what does a realistic family mealtime look like in your house? I appreciate that's not quick.
A lot of, please sit down. Please get back on your chair. Don't throw things. Yes, I mean, look, trying to get people to sit down for a meaningful period of time. The one thing, this isn't quite fair, but my husband, his family used to go out for Sunday lunch every week. And it's really important to him. And when our girls were little, he was like, we're going to start doing it. And we're not bringing screens. And it's going to be really hard to start with. And actually, I have to say, like over the last 5 years or so, we've gone out to eat as a family in a restaurant every week. And they are now really good at it, and they love it. And that's a great place for introducing new things because it's a fun setting. I mean, I'll bring Uno or I'll bring Polly Pocket. Like it's not like we're no toys, but we do sit down as a family, and that's been really, really great. But when we're at home, there's so many distractions and things. There's a lot of sit down.
And also I think it's a bit of novelty when you're eating out and about sometimes, isn't it, as well? And like you say, I do love that you can explore different things when you're out and about eating with them. And I think parents should try and think of it as more of an opportunity to like what's new that they can have on the side, or I can share with them.
Always sharing. Exactly. And again, as we said, like deliciousness. It's really delicious. And so there's loads of things that they'll try that they wouldn't necessarily try at home because it looks and tastes really good.
And also at home, I feel like there's always more tantrums and refusals and all of that stuff. So, but honestly, Ella, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I know parents are going to love it. I'm really, really, really grateful for you to coming. So thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to Ella for joining me today and sharing her amazing insights and experiences in feeding a family, and especially plant-based eating. This conversation is full of so many practical insights for any parent or caregiver raising kids and wanting to explore more of a plant-powered approach to family mealtimes, and just how to make healthy meals delicious for the whole family. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a quick review. It really makes a huge difference. This podcast is brought to you with support from Little Dish, so a huge thank you to them for hosting us in their headquarters as well. And make sure you stay tuned for my next episode. This episode of How to Feed wouldn't have been possible without my sponsors, Little Dish. Their meals are fresh, delicious, and made with ingredients that you would find in your own kitchen, making them a brilliant option for busy days.